In the early hours of a gray May morning, smoke curled into the sky above St. Peter's Basilica. White, pure, and final. The world watched with awe as a new pope was announced to the masses. Robert Prevost, the first American to ascend the throne of Peter, now known as Pope Leo XIV. Applause rang through the crowd, cameras flashed, and Vatican bells echoed across Rome. But behind the ceremonial facade, whispers had already begun. In private circles, some spoke not of divine inspiration, but of manipulation. Of a silent hand, centuries old, that had long sought to breach the walls of the Vatican. A hand that had finally succeeded. For decades, the idea that Freemasonry sought to infiltrate the highest echelons of the Catholic Church had been dismissed by many as fringe theory or reactionary paranoia. Yet historians know that the Church has always regarded Masonic orders with suspicion, issuing bulls, excommunications, and condemnations since the 18th century. So why now, in 2025, would an American cleric with barely a decade of cardinalship be raised to the most sacred office in Christendom? Why Leo XIV? A name not seen since the prophecy-heavy days of the 19th century. Those with eyes to see began connecting threads. Robert Prevost, born in Chicago, had a curious trajectory, from missionary priest in Peru to Augustinian superior, and then, seemingly overnight, an influential figure in the Roman Curia. His rise was meteoric and strangely frictionless. His closeness to certain Vatican financial institutions, his silence during critical doctrinal debates, and his involvement in obscure theological commissions raised more questions than answers. But none of that compared to the true anomaly, the College of Cardinals' voting behavior. Multiple sources inside the conclave reported something never before seen in papal elections: the speed and unanimity of the votes. From a fractured college divided between traditionalists and reformists, the ballots moved toward Prevost with almost choreographed precision. 3 ballots, no resistance. No factional maneuvering. It was as if the decision had been made before the doors even closed. Some believe the coordination was more than human. The term operazione lux began circulating among Italian journalists, an alleged clandestine effort launched years ago by a network of ecclesiastical Masons embedded within both the church and secular institutions. According to unconfirmed documents leaked to an independent news site based in Florence, Operazione Lux aimed to do what centuries of infiltration had failed to achieve: place one of their own, or someone obedient, on the throne of Peter. The operation, if it existed, would have required immense patience. Dozens of compromised clergy, altered appointment trajectories, and manipulation of episcopal conferences around the world. The ultimate goal wasn't merely to elect a liberal pope or a reformer. The goal was to install a gateway. A pontiff who could open the church from within, not with force but with language, dialogue, transparency, modernization. A man who spoke of light, yet was surrounded by shadows. And Prevost fit the mold. Charismatic yet cautious. Known for his administrative skills, not doctrinal clarity. His writings contain frequent references to fraternity, universal brotherhood, and synodality, concepts not inherently heretical, but ones that echoed Masonic vocabulary. The new pope's first homily made no mention of the Virgin Mary. He quoted not the Gospels but the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. For some, it was refreshing. For others, it was a signal. Within 24 hours of the election, multiple bishops across Latin America began issuing vague statements of support, all using identical phrasing: a pope for a new time. Simultaneously, a video surfaced, quickly suppressed, showing a known member of a European Masonic lodge celebrating at a private gathering in Paris, raising a toast to the white smoke. Coincidence, perhaps. But coincidences were piling up. Researchers soon revisited the writings of Malachy, the medieval Irish monk who allegedly predicted the lineage of popes. His final vision was of Peter the Roman, the last pope, who would oversee the destruction of the church amid great tribulations. While Leo XIV was not Peter by name, some pointed to the ominous symbolism of the lion, Leo the beast, the monarch, and to the American roots of Prevost, a nation often accused by traditionalists of secular imperialism. Others looked deeper into the rituals. Within hours of his election, an obscure liturgical change was made. The papal coronation, technically abolished decades ago, was revived in a quiet, private ceremony. Witnesses described a rite resembling not traditional Catholic liturgy, but something more esoteric. The tiara was not used, yet a strange geometric emblem was embroidered onto the new papal stole, a compass and starburst, nearly identical to ancient Masonic insignia. Was it symbolic? A test? Or a proclamation? Rome remained quiet. The Vatican's official channels denied any irregularities, stating that the election had followed all canonical procedures. But deep within the Jesuit order, murmurs of dissent were growing. An anonymous letter, circulated internally among certain theologians, warned that the Church had passed from mystery to manipulation. The smoke is white, it read, but the fire is hidden. And so the world watched as Pope Leo XIV took his seat, smiling, waving, and proclaiming a new age of unity and light. But in the catacombs of old basilicas, and in encrypted forums across the internet, a different narrative was forming. One that asked not who this pope was, but who had chosen him and why. The days following the election of Pope Leo XIV unfolded with unprecedented calm, or so it seemed. For the first time in decades, there was no immediate backlash, no cries of heresy, no obvious factional outrage. It was as if a silent consensus had been reached, one that left seasoned Vatican observers unsettled. Peace, one commentator noted, is sometimes the loudest alarm. Inside the Apostolic Palace, Leo XIV began his papacy with a flurry of symbolic decisions. He declined to live in the traditional papal apartments, choosing instead a modest suite within the Domus Sancti Marthi, citing humility and accessibility. But what passed unnoticed by many was that his private chapel had been subtly redesigned. The central crucifix had been replaced by a minimalist bronze sculpture depicting an abstract human form reaching toward a radiant sphere. No Christ, no wounds, just form and light. By the end of his first week, Pope Leo XIV had already appointed several new advisors, bypassing long-established protocols. Among them, a Jesuit theologian with ties to interreligious councils in Geneva, a cardinal economist with former World Bank affiliations, and, most curiously, a laywoman known for her writings on universal ethics and the spirituality of global citizenship. The traditional Curia was disbanded in what was described as a decentralization process. But critics, mostly whispering behind closed doors, began using another term, decapitation. Meanwhile, a sealed dossier from the previous pontificate, allegedly containing investigative results on covert Masonic cells within the Church, was quietly removed from the Vatican archives and, according to insiders, incinerated. No official comment was made. The dossier had been compiled over 20 years, and its destruction raised questions in conservative circles. What was Leo XIV so eager to erase? Elsewhere, small but potent signs began to appear. During an ecumenical address in Berlin, the Pope referred to himself not as the Vicar of Christ, but as a servant of human dignity. At a climate summit, he spoke not of creation or divine stewardship, but of the sacred equilibrium of planetary energies. His speeches were eloquent, inclusive, globally minded, but for many within the Church they lacked a soul. Simultaneously, a series of mysterious resignations began to ripple through dioceses across Europe and South America. Bishops known for their adherence to traditional doctrine were stepping down, often without explanation. In at least 3 cases, their successors were linked, either by friendship, schooling, or academic affiliation, to networks suspected of ideological alignment with Masonic lodges. One Argentinian archbishop, upon resigning, released a single cryptic statement: "I have seen the inner walls. They are no longer stone." The Vatican press corps remained tightly controlled. Journalists seeking access to Leo XIV were required to submit questions a week in advance. Unvetted press briefings were discouraged. A longtime Italian Vaticanist known for his investigative reports disappeared from public life, his social media wiped, his articles removed from archives. Colleagues were told he had retired. At the same time, a document leaked by a former Swiss Guard officer, known only as Fratello Nero, began circulating on encrypted messaging platforms. Titled Codex Lux, Protocols for Post-Doctrinal Transition, the document laid out a multi-stage plan allegedly designed to gradually shift the Church away from dogma and toward a new global spiritual order. Among the key tenets: removal of hierarchical structures, integration of non-Christian rituals, rejection of exclusive salvation, and emphasis on planetary consciousness. The final page of the Codex featured a Latin phrase, adveniat lumen, fiat homo novus. Let the light come. Let the new man be made. Was it real? Disinformation? Psychological warfare? Whatever its origin, the Codex echoed too closely the themes of Leo XIV's first encyclical, Fraternitas Terrae, Brotherhood of the Earth. In it, the Pope called for a universal moral compass beyond borders and religions. He invoked the divine spark in every being, but made no mention of Jesus Christ, the cross, or even the Church. Traditionalist theologians were aghast. But the mainstream media hailed it as the most inclusive papal text in history. Meanwhile, in the heart of Rome, a quiet resistance began to form. Underground liturgies in Latin, whispered masses by candlelight, confessions carried out under assumed names. These gatherings were not acts of rebellion, but of preservation. One young priest, when asked why he risked censure, replied, "Because Christ is not negotiable." Among the College of Cardinals, dissent remained muted, but not absent. One African cardinal, known for his outspokenness, vanished from public view after a private audience with the Pope. A leaked security log later showed that his Vatican access had been revoked within minutes of that meeting. No explanation was ever given. Then came the symbol, the final spark. During a global interfaith broadcast aired from the Vatican Gardens, Pope Leo XIV stood beside leaders from Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, and Hinduism. They each held a portion of a strange circular relic, composed of 7 interlocking rings. As they joined the rings together, the Pope declared, "This is the shape of the new covenant, not in law, not in creed, but in unity." The broadcast cut abruptly in several countries. Some claimed a technical glitch. Others were less sure. Speculation exploded online. Analysts noted the ring design bore a disturbing resemblance to diagrams found in 18th-century esoteric Masonic manuscripts. A well-known French occultist claimed it was the sigillum novus mundi, a long-lost symbol representing the spiritual unification of mankind under a single invisible order. The Vatican denied any connection. But the silence from Leo XIV was louder than any rebuttal. As Rome glittered in the evening sun, tourists smiled in St. Peter's Square, and the Pope continued his public work, preaching peace, unity, ecological balance. But deep within the church, something ancient had shifted. The walls were still standing, but the soul behind them felt altered. In the shadows, scholars, priests, and watchers of prophecy asked the question they feared most. Had the throne of Peter been turned? Had the keys passed from the hands of Peter to those of another? And if so, was this the beginning of something new, or the end of something eternal?